Israel's war cabinet has been meeting this afternoon to determine a response to Iran's unprecedented attack over the weekend. Tehran firing hundreds of drones and missiles on Saturday. This was in retaliation for what it says is Tel Aviv's deadly strike on its consulate in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Now, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres joining other Western countries in calling for restraint during an emergency meeting on the Security Council, or of the Security Council.
I strongly condemn the serious escalation represented by the large-scale attack launched on Israel by the Islamic Republic of Iran this evening, and I call for an immediate cessation of these hostilities." End quote. I remind all member states that the Charter of the United Nations prohibits the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations.
Now, Israel is yet to announce its next move. For more on the potential escalation, let's talk now to international relations analyst Aaliyah Vayez and the University of Cape Town's Dr. Stephen Quo. Let me start with you, Dr. Quo. How likely is Israel to listen to advice from leaders, particularly from the West, including its key ally, the United States, to exercise restraint here in perhaps pondering a retaliation against Iran?
Thank you for having me. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There seems to be, certainly right across the West, but I also see from India and Pakistan, there's a call for Israel to restraint and not to escalate into a full-scale war. So my guess, and my guess is that Israel might just do something that shows the Israeli people that they are doing something about it. They're going to retaliate, but they're doing it in such a way that it's not going to escalate war into a regional war. So that's my best guess.
Yeah. Ms. Vayez, let's come to you. If Israel does not listen to this advice and it decides that it is going to retaliate, let's then assess whether or not it can defend itself or it relies on its allies, namely the United States and the UK, who have said that they were responsible for intercepting these missiles that were fired on its territory. Do you think it has the capabilities to intercept these, or it is going to rely on its allies, even though the US has made it clear that they are not interested in a fight with Iran?
I mean, we're talking about a country with one of the world's most powerful military forces, which is Israel. And I think in terms of capability, while the bombardment of the Gaza Strip continues, Israel definitely has military capacity, and it has proven so, in its military attacks across not only Palestinian territories, but in places like Syria, like Lebanon. However, I will say, as you mentioned, its allies being the US, the UK, as well as France, and sideline countries that have that intercepted Iranian missiles or closed their airspace on Israel's behalf, like Jordan, like Saudi Arabia. It definitely has the allyship necessary for any level of retaliation, despite calls by, for example, Washington to not retaliate in a way that will further regional instability or create a somewhat a bigger, broader regional conflict that is not within the United States' interest. get involved in. So I think capacity is there. I think willingness, is, as Dr. Stephen mentioned, a bit wobbly, because, Israel is, it's facing, criticism on several fronts, not only in global public opinion, but, in international fora against what it is doing, the genocide it's conducting in Palestine. But nevertheless, it is definitely, what Israel did to the Iranian consulate in Damascus was definitely a direct and strategic effort to deter the world's attention from what it's doing in Gaza. So willingness is, 50%, I would say.
Dr. Quo, let's come back to you. The culpability of Israel's allies. What is their complicity to what is going on right now? And should they absolve themselves if indeed this Israel-Hamas conflict spills over into a regional war?
I wish international relations were cleaner and tidier. We know that we all know that, your listeners, and that we know that Israel's strongest supporter is the United States, but then Germany remains supportive of Israel, as well as some major Western countries. So over the last, couple of months, the Western public opinion is also shifting away from support for Israel. So I suppose in the way that if President Joe Biden of the United States say to the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, look, take the win, right? So none of the drones, or I think a couple of drones, a couple of missiles came through it, and there was like one casualty. I think that the United States are saying, look, don't escalate, don't retaliate. We don't want a regional war. And then that message is very, very strong and very, very clear from the West now. If Israel steadfastly still want to escalate the war, maybe they can do a face-saving measure and, send a few missiles towards Iran or something. Yeah. But I think the United States are genuinely saying, look, please don't escalate. It's not good for the global economy. We don't want the oil prices to skyrocket. So I don't think it's in anybody's interest right across the globe for this conflict in the Middle East to escalate any further.
Ms. Vayez, let's conclude with you. The people of Gaza are perhaps what should be the main focus right now, and there is a very clear potential for them to be forgotten for the time being. How perilous is their situation when you factor in the element of hunger?
Of course, it's a very pertinent question. I think the continuous bombardment of the Gaza Strip under, Israeli occupation and Israeli genocide, I think should be forefront on the world's agenda in terms of global governance, in terms of what various countries, for example, like South Africa, has and will continue to do in favor of the Palestinian people. I think what Israel has arguably successfully done is pushed Gaza and the ongoing violence, for example, in the West Bank, settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, further down on the world's agenda. And I think Palestinian people, especially in Gaza, are facing the worst humanitarian crisis. In the words of the United Nations Secretary General, that the globe has ever seen. So I think, the situation continues to remain dire. It continues to remain, at the forefront of at least the region's mind. And I think countries are best, should continue to prioritize it, for fear of what could happen if an entire population is subject to another 6 months of genocide.
Yeah. Dr. Quo? Parting shot. Iran has become part of the BRICS formation, which is why it's now called the BRICS Plus, a group of nations. Do you think there is any possible implications there? Might we have to see some of the countries which form part of the BRICS nations appealing to Iran to also taper down?
Well, I think India has already said, please calm down. China hasn't said anything too direct, and I read in the news that Israel is complaining that the Chinese didn't condemn the Iranian action hard enough. But that's a good point. I think BRICS is becoming a strong bloc, and I think that it's important that BRICS don't become an anti-Western alliance. It's not good for anybody. But certainly BRICS does have some levers to pull. India, China, South Africa, Russia certainly have some levers that they are able to pull with Iran certainly and other Middle Eastern countries. So I think BRICS countries need to also seriously think about making peace.
Dr. Stephen Kuo, thank you very much for your time, University of Cape Town. And we also have international relations analyst Aaliyah Vayez talking to us, analyzing this situation. Thank you both for your time and analysis tonight.